3 statements, same Sunday, read them in the order they happened. Statement 1. Trump posted on Truth Social at midday. I am fully aware that my representatives are having very positive discussions with the country of Iran, and that these discussions could lead to something very positive for all. Statement 2. Trump announced the United States will begin guiding commercial ships through the Strait of Hormuz starting Monday, May 4th. U.S. Central Command confirmed the operation. Guided missile destroyers, more than 100 aircraft, 15,000 service members. The stated purpose is to guide vessels that are not involved in the war safely through the waterway. Trump called it a humanitarian mission. Statement 3. Iran's Ebrahim Azizi, Deputy Speaker of Iran's parliament, said the U.S. plan to guide ships through the Strait of Hormuz is a violation of the ceasefire agreement. Very positive discussions. Guide ships through the strait with destroyers and aircraft. Ceasefire violation. And then a fourth thing which happened around the time Trump was making statement 2. A vessel was struck by unknown projectiles in the Strait of Hormuz. The UK Maritime Trade Operations Center confirmed it. All crew were reported safe. The identity of the projectile source was not established. But a tanker was hit on the same day Trump announced a humanitarian guidance mission for the same waterway. Very positive. Destroyers and aircraft guiding ships. Ceasefire violation. Tanker hit. I want to spend today explaining what the guidance operation actually is, why Iran is calling it a ceasefire violation, why Trump is calling it humanitarian, what the gap between those two descriptions tells you about the current state of the negotiations, and what it means that all 4 of those things happened on the same Sunday while gas in America hit $4.45 per gallon. Let me start with what the guidance operation actually is. Because the word guidance is doing a great deal of diplomatic work in a sentence that could just as accurately use the word escort or the word forced passage. U.S. Central Command described the operation as support for vessels seeking to transit the Strait of Hormuz safely. It will include guided missile destroyers, more than 100 aircraft, and 15,000 service members. A U.S. official told CBS News specifically that the initiative is not an escort mission. The distinction the official is making is legal and diplomatic. An escort mission would be America using its military to guarantee passage, physically accompanying civilian vessels and using force to ensure they get through. That would be America directly challenging Iran's blockade of the strait and would be widely interpreted as a resumption of hostilities. Guidance is framed differently. In the official description, America is helping vessels navigate a complex and dangerous waterway, not fighting through it. Navigating through it. The destroyers and aircraft are there for safety, not combat. The 15,000 service members are there to manage the operation, not to fight Iranian gunboats. Iran's Azizi heard the announcement and said ceasefire violation. He did not engage with the guidance versus escort distinction. He looked at guided missile destroyers, 100+ aircraft, and 15,000 service members in the Strait of Hormuz and said, that is military operation. That is not ceasefire. And Iran is right that the distinction between guidance and escort is thinner than the American framing suggests. Guided missile destroyers are warships. Their primary capability is combat. 100 aircraft are a combat air patrol. 15,000 service members constitute a significant military force. If an Iranian gunboat approaches a vessel being guided by this force, what happens? The official description says it is not an escort mission. It does not say what the rules of engagement are if an Iranian vessel attempts to intercept. And given that the IRGC has been seizing and firing on vessels in the strait throughout the ceasefire period, the question of rules of engagement is not hypothetical. The tanker that was hit on Sunday by unknown projectiles with all crew safe is the question of rules of engagement made concrete. A ship was struck in the strait on the day the guidance operation was announced. The source of the projectiles was not identified. Iran did not claim responsibility. America did not attribute. But the strike happened during the guidance announcement, in the guidance corridor. Now let me explain why Trump is simultaneously calling this very positive and announcing a military guidance operation. Steve Witkoff told CNN on Sunday that the U.S. is in conversation with Iran. He emerged from Trump's viewing stand at the PGA Cadillac Championship at Doral Golf Club. Trump was watching the final round, to speak to CNN reporters in a hallway outside the luxury viewing area. He said the U.S. and Iran are in conversation as they weigh negotiations. He said the U.S. is continuing to engage. He did not describe specific progress or specific proposals under discussion, but he said, "We are in conversation." That is the most optimistic public description of talks that any American official has offered since Islamabad in April. The setting is important. Witkoff is discussing active war negotiations with Iran at a golf tournament, not at the State Department, not at the White House Situation Room at Doral, while Trump watches the PGA Championship. This is not unusual for Trump's diplomatic style. The most consequential decisions of his first term were also made in settings that were not the traditional venues for that level of decision-making. But it tells you something about the pace of the process. The guidance operation begins Monday. The very positive discussions are being conducted at a golf tournament on Sunday. Both things are happening simultaneously, and the rhythm of decision-making reflects a president who does not separate the different layers of a crisis. And Iran's foreign ministry spokesperson confirmed on Sunday that Iran is reviewing the U.S. reply to its latest proposal. The 14-point proposal Iran submitted on Saturday was met with a U.S. response that Iran received. Iran is reviewing that response. This is the first confirmation that the U.S. replied at all to the 14-point proposal rather than simply dismissing it with a Truth Social post. The reviewing process means negotiations are running even if the specific contents of the U.S. reply have not been disclosed publicly by either side. So Trump's very positive on Sunday reflects a real development. The U.S. replied to Iran's 14-point proposal. Iran is reviewing that reply, and Witkoff and Kushner are in conversation with Iranian counterparts about where the gap is. That is more than was happening a week ago. A week ago, the U.S. canceled its envoy's Pakistan flight and told Iran to use the telephone. Now Witkoff is emerging from a golf tournament to say, "We are in conversation." That is movement. But the guidance operation is also movement, in a different direction at the same time on the same Sunday. While the negotiating track is more active than it has been in weeks, the military track is escalating the physical operation in the Strait. The guidance announcement puts 15,000 American service members with destroyers and aircraft in the precise waterway that Iran has been asserting sovereign control over since the ceasefire began. It challenges Iran's toll system. It challenges Iran's seizure authority. It does not use the word challenge, it uses the word guidance, but the physical effect is a challenge. Iran's Azizi understands this. He said ceasefire violation. He did not say we will respond. He did not announce a specific action. He named it and waited. Now let me explain the gas price, because $4.45 is the most honest number produced on Sunday and it connects everything else. The national average for regular gasoline is now $4.45 per gallon, according to AAA data published Sunday. That is up 35 cents from a week ago. It is up $1.47 since the war started on February 28th. It is a 49.3% increase since the conflict began. The calculation is straightforward. Approximately half of what Americans pay for gas since February 28th is the Iran war, not inflation, not supply chain issues, not any of the other factors that affected gas prices before this conflict. The Iran war specifically, measurably, has added approximately half the current pump price to what Americans are paying. Before the war, approximately 3,000 vessels passed through the Strait of Hormuz in a typical month. In March, it was 154 vessels, according to data CNN cited from Maritime Tracking. 3,000 to 154 in 1 month. 95% reduction. That collapse in transit is what $4.45 at the pump looks like when translated from maritime statistics into the price a person pays at a gas station in Ohio or Georgia or California or Texas. Every vehicle that uses gasoline is absorbing an Iran war fuel surcharge every time it fills up. The surcharge is not labeled. It is not visible. It is embedded in the per gallon number, but it is there. American consumer Jeff Olson told CNN on Sunday, "Us getting involved in a stupid war, I think that's had, obviously, a direct effect on the cost of everything here. We're only putting small amounts of gas in at a time in the hopes that the prices are going to come down again soon." That is the war described by a person who did not choose it, cannot influence it, and is paying for it $10 at a time because he is putting small amounts in and hoping it gets cheaper. Jeff Olson is the American economic consequence of Trump's very positive discussions and Iran's ceasefire violation claim and the guidance operation and the tanker that got hit, all compressed into one Sunday and one gas station. and his description, a stupid war, will not appear on any official diplomatic cable. But it is the most honest summary of what 154 vessels versus 3,000 vessels means to the person paying at the pump. Now let me add the Germany story and one more detail about the diplomatic team, because they both happened on the same weekend and connect to the larger picture. The Pentagon announced Friday that 5,000 U.S. troops will be withdrawn from Germany over the next year. The Republican chairman of the House and Senate Armed Services Committees, Mike Rogers and Rogers and Wicker, released a joint statement saying they are very concerned by the decision. German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius called the drawdown foreseeable. German Chancellor Merz told ARD television on Sunday that the withdrawal was anticipated and not new, saying maybe it is being exaggerated a bit. The troop withdrawal from Germany is related to the Iran war in a specific way that most coverage is not connecting. America is drawing down its European footprint at the same moment it is increasing its Middle East footprint with the guidance operation and 15,000 service members. Resources are finite. The Iran war is restructuring American military posture globally, and the Republican concern about the Germany withdrawal is a signal. Rogers and Wicker are not Democrats trying to embarrass Trump. They are the chairman of the two most powerful defense committees in Congress. When they say very concerned about a Republican president's decision, they are building the record for the next defense authorization hearing. And CBS News reported Saturday night that Nick Stewart has joined the American diplomatic team working to end the war with Iran. Stewart is a former lobbyist for the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies, FDD, a hawkish think tank that has been one of the most vocal advocates for maximum pressure on Iran and has been explicitly supportive of military action against Iran going back years. He lobbied on the Enhanced Iran Sanctions Act in 2026. He was brought onto the team by Jared Kushner. A White House official described his role as policy support for Witkoff and Kushner. The person doing policy support for Witkoff and Kushner in the very positive discussions with Iran is a lobbyist for the think tank that most publicly advocated for military action against Iran. That is not a minor footnote. That is a description of the diplomatic team's institutional orientation. FDD has consistently argued that sanctions and military pressure are more effective tools than diplomacy in dealing with Iran's nuclear program. The organization's alumni and advisors have spent years building the intellectual framework for exactly the kind of maximum pressure campaign that preceded this war. Adding an FDD lobbyist to the diplomatic team tells you something about what the administration's definition of very positive might look like in practice. Now, let me steelman the guidance operation, because Trump's framing is not entirely without merit. The UK Royal Navy said the Hormuz gridlock was causing a looming humanitarian crisis for the roughly 20,000 seafarers stuck on ships in the waterway. 20,000 people on ships in a contested strait. They did not choose to be there. They are cargo sailors from the Philippines, Ukraine, India, Indonesia, maritime workers doing their jobs on vessels caught between an American blockade and an Iranian control regime. They need food, water, and medical supplies. Their mental health is deteriorating. Their contracts have long since expired. The humanitarian argument for helping ships navigate through is not invented. There are 20,000 people stranded in that strait. And Trump is right that the guidance operation is structurally different from an escort mission in one important sense. An escort mission would guarantee passage and create a direct confrontation with any Iranian vessel that tried to intercept. A guidance operation, as currently described, provides navigation assistance and a military presence without a stated commitment to fight through if Iran challenges. The ambiguity is deliberate. It allows Iran to observe the operation, assess whether ships actually transit safely, and decide whether to challenge or accommodate. The ambiguity is the space in which the very positive discussions can continue, even as the military operation proceeds. Here is where the steelman collapses. The tanker was hit on Sunday. Unknown projectiles, safe crew, unidentified source. That is not the beginning of a humanitarian navigation mission. That is a shot fired in a contested waterway. On the same day, a new military operation was announced in that same waterway. The ambiguity that is supposed to allow negotiations to continue while the guidance operation proceeds is already being tested. One unknown projectile into one vessel on day one of the operation is not a catastrophe. But it is a signal that the guidance corridor is not a negotiation-free zone. Someone is still shooting in the Strait of Hormuz. Iran's Azizi said ceasefire violation and waited. The IRGC said in a separate statement that any attempt to use force to open Hormuz would be met with a firm response. The 14-point proposal Iran submitted on Saturday includes a Hormuz governance mechanism as phase 2 of a 3-phase resolution process. The guidance operation does not wait for that process to reach phase 2. It begins Monday with destroyers and aircraft. Very positive discussions and military guidance operations running simultaneously is not a contradiction in Trump's mind. He has always held multiple tracks at once, deal or blast. Positive discussions and ship guidance, that is his method. The question is whether Iran reads the multiple tracks as a signal of American flexibility or as a signal of American bad faith, as evidence that negotiations are genuine, or as evidence that America is trying to extract Hormuz opening through military pressure while claiming diplomatic engagement. Iran's response on Sunday was ceasefire violation. That is the reading of bad faith. That is Iran saying the guidance operation is not humanitarian navigation. It is unilateral Hormuz opening while our 14-point proposal on Hormuz governance sits under review. The very positive discussions are happening. The guidance operation is happening. The tanker was hit. Gas is at 445, and Trump is at a golf tournament in Doral, while Witkoff tells CNN we are in conversation. All of that is true simultaneously. It is the war's current state, negotiating and escalating in the same waterway on the same Sunday. Watch whether the guidance operation produces ships that successfully transit without Iranian interference. If they do, the operation has changed the facts on the ground, and Iran's Hormuz leverage diminishes. If they do not, if Iran seizes or fires on vessels being guided, the very positive discussions end and the blast option comes back. The guidance operation is not a ceasefire violation or a peace move. It is a test, and Monday will tell you which answer Iran gives. If you found this useful, push back on it in the comments. I will see you in the next one. Now let me steelman the guidance operation, because Trump's framing is not entirely without merit. The UK Royal Navy said the Hormuz gridlock was causing a looming humanitarian crisis for the roughly 20,000 seafarers stuck on ships in the waterway. 20,000 people on ships in a contested strait. They did not choose to be there. They are cargo sailors from the Philippines, Ukraine, India, Indonesia, maritime workers caught between an American blockade and an Iranian control regime. Their contracts have expired. The International Maritime Organization Secretary General confirmed 2,000 ships are waiting. The humanitarian argument for helping ships navigate through is not invented, and Trump is right that guidance is structurally different from escort. A guidance operation provides navigation assistance and military presence without a stated commitment to fight through. The ambiguity allows Iran to observe, assess, and decide whether to challenge or accommodate. It allows the 14-point review to continue simultaneously. Very positive and guidance operation are not mutually exclusive in this framing. Here is where the steelman collapses. The tanker was hit Sunday. Unknown projectiles, safe crew, unidentified source. That is not a humanitarian navigation mission proceeding peacefully. That is a shot fired in a contested waterway on the day the operation was announced. The ambiguity is already being tested before Monday. Iran's Azizi said ceasefire violation. The IRGC said any attempt to force open Hormuz would be met with a firm response. Iran's 14-point proposal includes Hormuz governance as phase 2. The guidance operation begins phase 2 unilaterally with destroyers and aircraft before Iran's proposal is answered. That is Iran's ceasefire violation argument in one paragraph. America is moving to phase 2 of the Hormuz question while Iran's phase 2 proposal sits under review. Iran calls that a violation. America calls it humanitarian. Monday will tell you whose description holds. Watch whether ships successfully transit the guidance corridor Monday without Iranian interference. Watch whether the Iranian Foreign Ministry issues a formal response to the U.S. reply to the 14-point proposal. Watch whether Trump's very positive language holds through Monday. Very positive discussions. Guide ships with destroyers. Iran said violation, tanker hit, Jeff Olson putting $10 in at a time. Monday is the test. If you found this useful, push back on it in the comments. I will see you in the next one. One final thing. The guidance operation and the very positive discussions running simultaneously tells you something specific about how Trump thinks about negotiations. He does not separate pressure from diplomacy. He applies both at the same time. From his perspective, the guidance operation makes the positive discussions more likely to produce results, not less. Pressure plus conversation equals deal. That is his theory of negotiation, demonstrated across both terms and across the Iran war's 65 days. Iran's theory of negotiation is the opposite. Pressure while talks run equals bad faith. Diplomacy requires the pressure to pause for the conversation to be genuine. That is why Iran says ceasefire violation when America launches a guidance operation the same day it says very positive. Iran is not describing a military action. Iran is describing a negotiating method it finds incompatible with genuine diplomacy. Two theories of how deals get made. The guidance corridor on Monday is the live test of which theory produces results in this specific conflict. Watch, and here is what makes Sunday, May 4th, different from every other day in this war since the ceasefire. It is the first day where the two tracks, negotiation and military operation, are not merely running in parallel, but are actively intersecting in the same physical space. Previous negotiations happened while the blockade ran in the Strait. Previous military operations happened while diplomatic channels remained open, but those were separable. The negotiations were in Pakistan. The military was in the Strait. On Sunday, the negotiating reply to Iran's 14-point proposal is under review, and the military guidance operation begins in the same strait that Iran's 14-point proposal wants to govern. The negotiating text and the military operation are now about the same thing at the same time. There is no geographic separation left between the diplomatic track and the military track. That is what the guidance corridor means. Not just a humanitarian mission, not just a ceasefire violation, a convergence of the two tracks in the same 34-kilometer stretch of water on the same day, while gas is at $4.45 and Jeff Olson is putting $10 in at a time and hoping it gets cheaper. Monday is the test. The corridor will tell you which theory of negotiation this war runs on. If you found this useful, push back on it in the comments. I will see you in the next one.